Wisconsin Energy Codes Collaborative meeting. We really appreciate you all taking the time to join us today, and it looks like we have a really great group of you all on the line. So yeah, looking forward to a great discussion this morning. I'll just introduce myself now. My name is Sarah Wells, and I'm a community decarbonization researcher with Slipstream, and I'm helping to support the Wisconsin RECCE Award, from which we're able to establish this collaborative effort. So I'll be helping to facilitate today's conversation, along with a few of my colleagues from the partner list that you see on this slide. So I'll kick us off by going over our agenda for today's call. We're going to start by going over some key objectives of our Codes Collaborative group and why we're all meeting here today. Then we'll quickly go over some relevant updates from our Wisconsin RECCE project that might be of interest to you all. Then I'll provide a recap of our last Codes Collaborative meeting, as we do have a few new members here today and want to make sure we're all up to date and on the same page. And then I'll also share an overview of some results that we collected from a post-meeting feedback form that we sent out to you all, which was really helpful for us organizers to help learn what you all want to see from this group going forward and how do you like to see it operate. Darren Port from Slipstream is then going to lead a conversation about code adoption and the recently introduced statement of scope for the Wisconsin Uniform Dwelling Code. We'll spend a few minutes thinking about subcommittee groups that our group could possibly establish and what those might look like. We're hoping to spend some time revisiting our conversation from last December about barriers that you're all seeing in practice when it comes to code adoption and compliance. But this time we're going to try and focus a bit more on thinking about resources we could create or actions we could take to actually address those barriers. And then lastly, we'll provide some reminders and some next steps before we break. So a pretty packed agenda for an hour and a half. So let's dive in. All right. So I'll get to the objectives of the collaborative in just a minute, but first I just want to mention what brings our team here today to facilitate this meeting. So our team is working through a Department of Energy grant called the Resilient and Efficient Codes Implementation Grant, which we call RECCE for short. It is funded through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And our project is called Building a Strong Foundation for Energy Codes in Wisconsin. And our overarching goal is to improve resiliency and our energy efficiency across the state by working to support stakeholder engagement in the code adoption process, help improve widespread code compliance, and also supporting local governments and Native nations that are interested in the improving the efficiency and resiliency of their buildings and their communities. So now thinking about why we've established a Codes Collaborative group for Wisconsin, our group aims to serve as a platform to amplify your voices when it comes to influencing the code adoption process, as well as enforcement and compliance practices. So as a group, we can take action to address common challenges that you might all be observing or experiencing in the field by developing new training resources, conducting research in areas where there might be gaps, helping to craft recommendations as it relates to code provisions or amendments. We've heard some interest among folks in considering stretch energy codes in Wisconsin, so that could be something we look into down the road. We also are hoping to serve as a communicator of best practices and knowledge to others across the state who might be interested or impacted by energy codes, including the public. And it's worth noting that when we created this group, we wanted to reach out to a diverse group of stakeholders, and we know that many of you might come to the table with different experiences and different data and different perspectives, and ultimately we're encouraged that we want to hear different ideas, but we're hoping that everybody in the group can contribute towards our shared goal of advancing building efficiency across the state. Thinking a little bit more big picture about energy code collaboratives, as you can see on this map, we aren't the first group of people to be digging into these issues. So there are several collaboratives already in existence across the country, including a couple that have more of a national focus and convene stakeholders from across the US to share challenges about code alignment, both within regions and also across state lines. And then there's several different statewide code collaboratives that are more similar in format to our group, as you can see on blue, on this map in blue. So the blue states have code, statewide codes collaboratives, as do the states in green, but those states in green also are part of some national codes collaboratives, in particular one that focuses on rural codes in rural areas. And as you can imagine, those statewide groups can narrow their focus down a little bit more to regional issues that we're seeing on the ground. So that's something that we're trying to accomplish with our Wisconsin group. So in our last meeting in December, we spent some time discussing some of these challenges that you're seeing in the field. And here are just a few of them that might be able to help kind of guide our group's efforts over time. There are several others not on this slide, but I'll just focus on these few for now. So while simple, one challenge that is that there aren't often opportunities for stakeholders to really gather and have these conversations about energy codes. So we're really just hoping that this collaborative can serve as a platform to bring all our voices into one room. We've also seen challenges surrounding access to educational resources, data, technical assistance. So we're hoping that our group can serve as a hub for sharing these resources and making that information more accessible. Another challenge is a lack of service providers, such as raters, available to fully implement and comply with codes. And we see that this points to a larger workforce issue that we're seeing in our industry, which especially in the codes profession is shrinking. So it can make it difficult to meet demand for code inspections and stuff. So that may be an issue that we're looking to tackle as it pertains to workforce. And then an underrepresentation of certain interests, stakeholder interests like affordable housing, for instance. So a key goal of ours is to strike a balance between those different perspectives and ensure that voices that are sometimes not brought to the table and left out of these conversations are heard and as involved as we can make them. So with that, unless anybody has any questions or comments at this point, I'll hand things off to a few of my colleagues to provide some updates on other things that we're working on through this RGGI project. All right. I believe Darren, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, certainly. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So this is a resource that provides the key changes to the 2024 Model International Energy Conservation Code. It compares the 24 to the 21 and in many cases to the 2009 IACC and the current Wisconsin UDC. But it primarily focuses on the new additions or the new provisions that are in the 24 International Energy Conservation Code. And this should be live up on the website link that you see there this week. And so certainly use this as a resource. It's certainly not comprehensive, every change, but the key changes. That's what I've got on this one. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah.
Go ahead.
I'll just share a little bit about this. Last meeting, we talked about the stakeholder interviews that I have been conducting over and in partnership with several of the other project team members over the last year or so. I've shared a larger draft of the stakeholder interview report with the folks that we interviewed. Received a little bit of feedback, not a ton, but one positive response from someone who expressed opinions of not really being in favor of advancing the code, and one response from a contractor who expressed opinions being in favor of advancing the code. So to me, that is at least one data point that shows that the interviews and the report that we developed is a fair representation of the different opinions when it comes to advancing code. And we developed a 2-page summary of those interviews that will also be on the website, and you'll all will be able to access. Joe, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the wording of this. You said one positive response was from an association generally opposed to code updates. So are you saying that normally they would oppose a code update, but they are in favor of updating the energy code? Or are you considering any response being, at least you heard something?
Yeah, I'm saying they responded and said they liked the report. So they thought
Okay.
it was a fair representation of their perspective.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Your Honor, Cynthia, would you want to talk about the baseline studies?
Coming off right now. Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is John Kroll, Building Science Researcher at Slipstream. And now we're going to discuss what our baseline fuel study is and what it is becoming and how far we are. So as you may recall, we have 3 sections of the building sector we are doing a baseline study on. One is going to be single family residential, also residential in the multifamily sector, and then also commercial buildings. So this is just some information on the Wisconsin Energy Code's website about how you can participate. So if anybody has any builders or contacts or anybody who wants to participate, please forward us that information. Go to the next slide, Sarah. First, we'll start to talk about our single-family residential construction baseline study. So as of date, we've been in a total of 24, perhaps 25 homes right now. We have somebody in the field at a site, and we're hitting right. I think we're right at 20% of our total homes needed for our study. This has been primarily done in the southern part of the state, in Dane County, in the southeastern part of the state. However, we are finally starting to branch off into the rest of our state. We've been in western Wisconsin a little bit now, so making some headway there. Because of the scope of this project, we've had to also recruit some other staff at Slipstream to help with recruitment and outreach of municipal permit data and whatnot. So always expanding our services and seeing how we can reach out builders. So again, if anybody has any context, please let us know. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of progress. We're getting there with the summer months now, cutting it almost underway. We expect this to really expand very quickly. And then for our multifamily on the residential side, we just completed our first site visit for a multifamily site. And we have 4 in the pipeline that are under plan review. So the idea is that with multifamily and commercial, we need to do a plan review prior to actually getting on site. So we have some in the pipeline, just waiting for those construction milestones to be reached so we can get in at the pre-drywall phase and also our final diagnostic testing phase. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
I can do the update here. Hi, everybody. My name is Cynthia. I'm a project manager at Slipstream. I'm also leading recruitment efforts for all 3 of these baseline studies. Like John mentioned, we're also doing, there's 3 studies going on. There's residential, multifamily, and commercial. And so for the multifamily and the commercial, like John mentioned, we're doing a plan review process where we're looking at construction documents in advance. And then we're also going on site. This is different because on the residential site, we're just doing site visits and we're not doing the plan reviews. So as you can imagine, for the commercial study, we have a lot of people working to get buildings recruited. And so similar to what John was saying, if you have any leads or recruitment ideas, please let us know, please reach out. And throughout this process, we're starting to get documents for plan reviews for 12 different buildings, and we're going to continue up until 2026. And then some of you may have gotten an email earlier from Jeanette about our sampling plan, but we are kind of tweaking the building types and targets that we have to better accommodate or better represent construction trends in Wisconsin. So we are considering and will likely we'll replace retail and warehouse with office and education. So yeah, that's all outlined in here. And but yeah, like I mentioned, if you have any sort of leads or recruitment ideas, please reach out and would love to hear them. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. All right, and so I'll pass things on to Bill from PSD, who's going to give us some updates on our Energy Code Technical Advisor role. So updates from the field.
Good morning. Thank you, Sarah. My name is Bill Dieters. I work for PSD Consulting. In conjunction with the partnership within this program, we are providing a Energy Code Technical Advisor program where we can assist stakeholders around the state, whether it's builders, contractors, building code officials, design professionals, so forth, in helping understand and providing training for the residential and commercial energy code as currently written within the state of Wisconsin. As you can see, by the screen, we do virtual presentations on a bi-weekly basis. For the most part, we do in-person presentations as well. My partner or colleague with the company, we'll introduce him in a second. He does outreach to the various organizations around the state, gathering information, finding out needs for training or issues that may have come up. Through these in-person trainings and webinars, we're compiling a list of desired trainings and classes. So for things that may be missing in their training, as they say, as a building code official, or some areas they may not be sure about, such as blower door testing or air sealing or overall building science. We will be helping, and we are continuing to help with energy-related code questions as they come up. We can't offer an official code interpretation, but we may be able to help a stakeholder to understand the code passage as it's written, maybe get a perspective to approach back to the code official or the design professional and how to look at the way that the code passage is. All of these programs are at no cost to participants throughout the state. And the current contract or current program ends in June 30th of 2025, with hopefully an extension through December of 2026, continuing the circuit rider or technical advisor program, as well as the training within the state. Next slide, please. So that's me on the left, Bill Dieters. I'm a senior technical training specialist with PSD. Robbie, I believe, is on, or Robbie Oakley. He is the field contact, the in-state contact. And then we have Andrew Wilbur, who is an outreach specialist. I don't believe he's on today. Robbie, do you want to give a few words as to what you're doing for the program?
Yeah, so what I'm doing is I am cold calling, sometimes very cold calling building inspectors around the state, trying to let them know about our program, about our trainings. Usually I will start to drive to their offices so that way they can't ignore me when I'm physically talking to them in person. And just trying to get them to be more on board with the trainings we give, as well as offering help with our hotline. So if they have any kind of energy code questions, we'll get back to them within 24-hour business hours.
Okay, thank you. Go to the next slide, please. So as of today, we have presented training to 1,313 attendees across Wisconsin, which started training back in December. Some of the past sessions, we've done an overview of the Uniform Dwelling Code, UDC, for residential construction, as well as the Commercial Energy Code. Those were 1-hour programs. We have specific programs that involve residential HVAC sizing, including manual J, S, and D, the design of the system, residential air sealing and infiltration and insulation programs, building science revolving around residential heat and insulation, how those different aspects act and interact within the structure itself. And of course, last week we presented the first 3-hour review on the UDC as it's currently written. All the programs seem to be very well received, getting a lot of questions, especially in field with the code inspectors. We're going to be wrapping up soon a series of sessions where we're involved with the Wisconsin Code Inspection Organization. And we have anywhere between 50 to 200 attendees for that. We talk about the residential air sealing program and the manual J program. In a lot of cases, it's maybe some new information, but most of the time it's just a review and a lot of important items. So next slide, please. Should be a list of the upcoming programs that we have. Tomorrow, the 19th, we'll be doing a 3-hour presentation on infiltration, air sealing, and residential HVAC. That'll be a combination of in-person and virtual. Then in March 26th will be large commercial building mechanical systems. And on April 9th, we're going to have lighting systems for large commercial buildings. And then again, I will be presenting both of those programs live to a Code's official meeting, April 17th in Eau Claire. We also have 2 air infiltration testing and duct tightness tests that we'll be conducting in person. That'll be available for interested parties to come out and watch how a blower door test and duct tightness testings are completed. And those will be scheduled soon and advertised. Just a matter of waiting for the weather to break to the point where we're able to get into homes and find homes that we're able to get into. We will have some additional trainings coming up, including advanced framing techniques in residential construction, moisture control within residential buildings, and multifamily construction. We're always looking for suggestions for training topics. So if we go to the wienergycodes.org website, you can see the upcoming trainings there, register for those trainings. You go to our link for the GoToWebinar registration. There's a short survey that we ask for additional training topics. So we'll be scheduling additional trainings for May and June coming up very soon. Hopefully by the end of the week or the beginning of next week, those will be advertised. If you can move on to the next slide, please. So some of the positive comments that we've had from participants. Yeah, we're glad to have this review available. Very important information. That came from one of the building inspector seminar by numerous people, and things that they may have overlooked or may have missed in the past, where they didn't know that they should have been looking for these things. The HVAC, the Manual J S&D program was as well received as regarding new information with the program, and some things that they may not be familiar with when documentation for the Manual J things that they could be looking at to make sure that we're right sizing equipment, or overall just ensuring that we're heating and cooling the homes to provide a comfortable environment for the occupants, and then we're not wasting energy by having larger equipment than needed. We've had numerous trainings from code departments asking, hey, could you come out and do a small group session for us, or do it virtually for 4 or 5 inspectors, which we are arranging and waiting to hear back from those individuals. We had a couple people say that they're looking forward to the commercial energy code information, just from the perspective of they haven't had much training on the commercial side. So to get these questions, we have a lot of questions that are asked, we answer as well when pertaining to insulation, installation, air barriers, vapor barriers, things like that. So we're always able to assist, and glad to do that with these presentations. So in the final slide, if we look at some of the concerns from the stakeholders, they're glad to have the review, but it's very important where's the code going in Wisconsin? That's one of the questions we get asked. And we say, well, there's going to be information forthcoming, obviously. So code could be changing, could be staying the same. It depends on what the state is asking for. One of the big things that we have found out is that a lot of individuals, builders, and even code officials are saying there aren't enough certified individuals to conduct building infiltration and duct tightness testing. And this could very well be one of those things where you build it, they will come type thing. We introduce the requirements of this, and then we'll get the people certified to be able to do this testing. So that is a concern. One concern that was kind of jaw-dropping to me was the materials just a review, nothing new in the energy code. Well, that hasn't changed in quite a while. So one of the individuals was not real pleased that we were just rehashing the existing information, but it's still important to understand the information that's there in the code and how to enforce that. And one of the other concerns was about the additional in-depth training that would be required going forward if the energy code changes. Obviously, that will be a big part of this. If the code cycle changes, obviously there's going to be some, if there have going to be some changes involved, it's going to require some new training, which hopefully we'll be able to, with the partnership, continue to go forward and develop that training and present it. So that's all that I have to discuss on the technical advisor program. So again, go to wienergy.org for additional information. Robbie Oakley is the field contact in Wisconsin. I'm in Pennsylvania, but I'm available by phone or by email. Are there any questions regarding this program? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Bill. That was great. All right. So next I'll just spend a few minutes recapping what we focused on in our first Codes Collaborative meeting in December, and I'll also share some results from that post-meeting feedback form we sent out. And I'll also note that this is our second meeting. It's definitely, we have some logistics to go over, as happens when you start new groups like this, and hopefully over time there'll be less and less logistics and more discussion time that we can allocate in these calls. All right, so in that December meeting, we had 14 participants representing various stakeholder groups, not including those of us that are part of the Wisconsin Recce project team. And we've had a few more members join our outreach since December. And I think already today we have, I'm not counting, but we may have, at least met or exceeded that number. So just pretty pleased with the with our attendees here today. And again, thanks for joining. I'm glad to get more and more people involved in this effort. So in that December meeting, some key topics that we discussed were just some background on the Codes Collaborative and goals, just like I did earlier in today's session. We started that conversation about barriers and opportunities related to code advancement and compliance, and we'll probably continue that discussion throughout these calls. We talked about the direction that the collaborative could take in the future, so like our long-term vision of what we might hope to accomplish, as well as some brainstorming around our mission statement. And I'll be sending a follow-up email after today's call with a final call for edits to that mission statement, which reflects previous rounds of feedback that we've received both during our last meeting and afterwards. And then we talked about some meeting logistics, so how often we're going to meet as a group and if we'd like to create subcommittees. And I'll get back to those points in just a slide. So looking now back at the results we got on that feedback form, we asked you all how you might want to engage with the collaborative moving forward. And I do want to note that these charts are a little bit deceiving from a data visualization perspective, since people were allowed to select more than one response on each form. But generally, we can still see what people were thinking. So it seemed that there was definitely interest from participants in continuing to join these meetings, which is great. And also receiving periodic email updates from our Wisconsin Recce team about new developments or updates about what's going on with energy codes in the state, such as new resources that we might be putting together or any updates on the code adoption process, for example, that we could share with you all. So based on that feedback, we are actually planning to create a Wisconsin Recce newsletter to keep you all in the loop. So please keep an eye out for that in the coming weeks. And there also seemed to be some interest in creating subcommittees, and we'll be revisiting that for a few minutes a little bit later in today's call. So I'm not going to get too far into that right now, but there was interest, which is great. In terms of meeting cadence, the vast majority of you indicated that quarterly meetings are best. And I will just caveat that if we do decide to establish those subcommittees, overall meeting frequency might increase for some of you, depending on how we set it up. So for instance, we might want to have full collaborative meetings every 4 months where everybody is in the same room. And then in between those, we might want to have individual subcommittee meetings. So it could possibly be more like a meeting every 2 months. We also could, rearrange that schedule, in a different way. But again, we can kind of talk about that a little bit later. In terms of engagement strategies that we can use to kind of keep things interactive for you all and promote some good conversation, we got some pretty good feedback on the use of Menti polls in our last call to collect input and share ideas. And for those of you who aren't able to join, they're kind of just like in-meeting polls or questions that we can ask and put on the screen and have people answer in real time. We're not planning to use those polls today, but instead we figured we'd try breakout rooms, which a few of you suggested could also be a good way to facilitate more focused discussions. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how that goes after today's call. And we might also return to using Menti again in the future. It kind of just depends on what we're talking about. So it could change from situation to situation. And for now, we'll probably stick to virtual meetings as they're the most kind of accessible format to get everyone in one room. But if there's ever interest in planning an in-person session down the road, maybe we could coordinate that as well. And then lastly, we heard a bunch of ideas about what topics we could focus on in future meetings. So things like navigating the code update process and understanding where the collaborative can fit in to drive change. Darren's going to be getting into that a little bit shortly, but it's a conversation we can continue. Weighing costs and benefits of updating codes, including considering things like cost impacts and workforce. Exploring interest and feasibility of policies like stretch codes in Wisconsin. That was something that was brought up a couple of times. And then also ways that we could work together to build stakeholder awareness of energy code related issues and resources we put together. Is any questions or comments kind of on that? Great. So I will pass things over to Darren Port, who's gonna kind of go over some code adoption updates for you all.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Yes, I'm Darren Port. I'm the Building Energy Code Policy Advisor at Slipstream. And today we'll talk a bit about the statement of scope that was just recently issued or published in the Wisconsin Administrative Register. And then we'll open up for discussion regarding the scope statement and the future direction of codes in Wisconsin. So the statement of scope was published on March 3rd, and it kicks off the process of code adoption in Wisconsin. So the statement of scope needs to be published for 10 days before it could move forward to rulemaking. And within those 10 days, the legislature can opt to have a hearing, which would happen within 30 days. Once the hearing happens, then it's about a 24 to 30 month process to look at the rulemaking. And this is not just for the energy code, I'll show you in a moment, but many chapters of the Wisconsin UDC. So there's some links here that you can take a look at the statement of scope and the chapters and to see what will be considered by the UDCC, the Uniform Dwelling Code Committee, which meets on a monthly basis. I'm not sure it'll meet this month, depending on the hearing schedule and if there's a hearing scheduled, but definitely will meet April. You can go to the next slide. So this is essentially the chapters, what the chapters look like of the Uniform Dwelling Code and what the statement of scope will cover. So it covers these numerous chapters and everything from fee schedules to licensing and certification to the administration and enforcement of the code, construction standards. So this is things like fire alarms and railings and staircases, and of course energy, HVAC, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, electrical standards, and plumbing. So the committee may choose to pick up any one of these chapters. I'm not sure they necessarily follow this order or not. And can choose to move forward from the current codes in Wisconsin. Currently, the energy code is based on the 2009 IECC that's amended. So this is what is before the UDCC. So it'll take some time to get to all of these chapters. So energy won't necessarily be the first chapter. And as Bill said, the committee could also choose not to update the code. I'm feeling optimistic that we will see updates, particularly on the energy side, but it is at the committee's discretion. You can go to the next slide. And this is the Wisconsin Code Adoption Update process in this table. We have a document on our website. There's a link here, and I'm sure we'll send those links out. So where we are now is the first one there, the scope statement or statement of scope, and we're waiting on whether there'll be a public hearing. Once that hearing happens, the committee can move to drafting new rules for those codes that you just saw, those provisions you just saw on the previous slide. At some point after the codes are discussed, there'll be an economic impact analysis that DSPS will prepare and publish. This goes to the Legislative Clearinghouse for their review. They have 20 days to review it. If there are anything they need further information that would be requested, and there will be another public hearing at that point in time. At each of the UDCC committee hearings, there'll be opportunities for the public to speak. At the end of the agenda, there's always a public comment period. So there's opportunities there for various interests to discuss relevant information to the code. Then once the final rule draft is approved, then an adoption order is published in the Administrative Register and the rule becomes effective. So this is going to take time. Like it says, 24 to 30 months, and to discuss and work through all of the codes. All right, so that's just a quick overview. And again, we have a one-pager on that process that you can find on the website. There's a narrative description as well as this table. So what we'd like to do now is open it up to you all. The idea of this code collaborative is to discuss among ourselves the issues at hand. So we've got some prompting questions here, but certainly your comments in this open forum, if you will, don't have to stay just contained to these prompting questions, but we want to hear what's on your mind as it relates to the issuing of the statement of scope and the state potentially moving forward and adopting new residential dwelling codes. So just the prompting questions are what model code would you like to see the state adopt? I guess you can address that to any of the codes at hand. But I think particularly energy is our interest here this morning. What barriers do you see to adopting maybe one of the two most recent codes, the 21 or the 24 IECC? We're interested in what you've experienced as far as creative ideas for implementing training on the new codes. As Bill presented, they're actively engaged in training and are always looking for new and innovative ideas. And then Bill also mentioned this, as far as growing the rating community, certainly a concern that's been expressed in the trainings. So how can that be done in Wisconsin? How can we get more folks involved in that profession and rating buildings, residential and commercial? So I'll leave it at that, and I invite you folks just to chime in, raise your hand, and let us know what's on your mind as it relates to the adoption of new codes. Bill, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Bill Neitzel. Been with the electrical industry for over 50 years, been involved with the state electrical code pretty regular since the late 80s. Okay. Interested, obviously. We did a lot of energy management ourselves as contractors. Last part of my career, the last 30 some years, I've been an inspector involved with the codes. Our biggest obstacle is our legislature. I see the discussions, when you think about we're on the 2020 2009, 2015, 2017 electrical code. It's pathetic that as a state, this is where we're at, but we're restricted by our legislature and our opposition, which quite often appears to be the building industry. So until that hurdle can be overcome, we're kind of stuck with what other people determine is the best interest of the state of Wisconsin. Even though many of us know that we'd be a lot better off, adopting codes in a timely manner. But that's going to be the biggest hurdle to try to overcome. We are in the current process of updating the electrical code. We all know that the building code is currently at the Supreme Court waiting to have a determination. In the grand scheme of things, code personnel are very low on the list of what our legislators really care about. So I guess that's more my opinion than a solution. I wish I had some solutions, but I've been battling this for the last 30 years and I've seen it continually deteriorate, and the current climate doesn't appear to be changing anytime soon.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Appreciate you expressing those thoughts, and certainly the legislature and the builders came up in the stakeholder interviews that Matt spoke about, and like yourself, no one necessarily had solutions to sort of overcoming those barriers. It seems the legislature might be the harder factor than the builders. And, it seems like with the builders, a robust discussion can at least occur. Data can be presented. It's just that there's sort of a mismatch between builder data and other data that might be promulgated by Department of Energy or the national labs. So yeah, thanks for expressing that.
If I could add anything, Bill, one of the
Sure.
with the timeline that Darren showed and Darren mentioned this, there is opportunity for public comments or people to weigh in. One of our underlying goals talking about this collaborative or the work that we're doing, especially over the next year and a half, is to really identify where that public comment would be the most useful. And so you have the public comment to the UDCC, but your comment, you're mentioning the legislature. We know that they obviously have a role in this. So we can think a little bit more strategically about what that looks like. We haven't really as part of this group, but providing the right information to people is really our goal. And hopefully with that good information, people will make good decisions, but we want to make sure that that information is presented to all the parties that can use it. So that might include the legislature as well. So just a couple of thoughts there.
Yeah, thanks, Jeanette. And I think as far as it pertains to making a public comment, it could be that a comment is made on behalf of the Code Collaborative. So you all in your respective areas of expertise or professions could comment from a personal point of view, but there's also the possibility of the Code Collaborative making a comment or submitting code change recommendations, strengthening amendments. That's all potentially on the table. So as the Code Collaborative is representative of interests within the state, we'd like to see this get to a point where folks have that comfortability level of potentially commenting on behalf of the Wisconsin Code Collaborative. Is it Corinne? Is that?
Yeah, thank you. It's Corinne.
Corinne.
I've been reflecting on a lot of things over the last, 60 days or so.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting about the barriers and the things that we face here in the state of Wisconsin are that some of them are self-inflicted because our codes are so far behind, and because there's an overall level of ignorance at every single entry point when it comes to building codes. And this notion that a building code update will cause harm is prevalent at all levels as well, right? Like it's going to be harmful for the code officials because they're not trained and they don't have the resources. Well, obviously, we're starting to chip away at that, and that's fantastic. But then there's the builders who feel that there's going to be harm to them because they don't know what, it's a change and it's new and cost of materials and etc. And then of course that will trickle down. We need to somehow flip the narrative on that harm and get them to focus on the opportunities, right? Even in this call, there were highlighted opportunities that came up, albeit, they were niche. But if we don't start getting them past that notion, I mean, the reality is, it takes 36 months to get a code adopted. I mean, whatever they're talking about at the first start of that, that first month is outdated by the time they get to the 36-month mark. And so no matter what, we're having a devalued building stock, if it's residential or commercial, and people aren't understanding that. The other barrier that we have is that there's no negative impact in our marketplace here in Wisconsin right now if you have a crummy building. There's not the assessors, commercial and real estate, don't know how to differentiate a high performance building from a non-performance building. MLS does not reflect sustainability in a meaningful way. Even on a commercial real estate realm, groups like CoStar that are tracking commercial properties and rentability and that sort of thing have a very weak way of identifying sustainability that's not apples to apples. As a market, we're doing a really poor job talking about why energy efficiency in a final product makes it a better building. We only talk about it with the AEC community and, the building code officials, and no one has a general understanding of that value. And I wish I could just say I know exactly that golden arrow that we need to use, but until the market values this stuff, until it manifests in the after part, we're going to continue having this uphill battle every single time. And their arguments about, return on investments and things being hard to obtain, of course they're going to be hard to obtain if you're using a 2015 code that behaves like a 2009 code. Of course that's going to be a cheaper building to build because it's crummy. But the operation costs and the investability of that building later on and what that building stock is going to mean for us as a state later on. We need those legislatures to legislative officials to understand that our building stock is less valuable than Minnesota's or Illinois' or anyway, I'll stop talking. I could probably rant for a while. I've been thinking about this for a long time. And as a U.S. Green Building Council employee, I'm seeing a lot of different factions and factors and, playing into this. And I really think that this is multifaceted. And I do fully appreciate that this group can't address all of that. But those are the unseen barriers that I don't know that our built environment teams are paying attention to. So I'll yield.
Great. Yeah, thanks for your thoughts on that. To Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that occurs to me that I've mentioned on several occasions with the various code groups and energy discussions I've been involved in, that maybe as a talking point or an entree, if you will, to try and start the discussion is, regardless of what we're doing in Wisconsin, the industry is moving past us. in terms of HVAC, equipment, controls, those types of things, because there are other areas in the country, other areas in the world, actually, that, are at the forefront of this. So on some level, you're getting more efficient equipment than you need by the old code, just because, Trane doesn't have a Wisconsin factory that produces equipment that, it meets with the old Wisconsin code, which is not as efficient and not as controlled properly as, Minnesota, who's, at the forefront of the code. So I guess my point is, in a lot of ways, and I only, not only, but I work in the multifamily and the commercial realm. I don't get involved in single family houses. But I mean, my perception and my observation, and like I said, is that, it's relatively painless to do a lot of the things that the code requires, because the industry with the equipment and controls, has gotten to that point because they've had to. And it's not, it's relatively painless to do that. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. So I mean, I think, to Corinne's point, there's a lot of barriers, and I think, focusing on the opportunities makes a lot of sense, and I think we can address some of those. I think just you can pick almost any of these topics, like insurance underwriting, right? Like, state of Wisconsin would have more favorable rates with more up-to-date codes, right, as it pertains to insurance underwriting. So I think, flipping the narrative, as you say, and focusing on the opportunities. I like that. I like that positive approach. And to Joe's point, yes, if you look at the original field studies that DOE did, it's now 7 years ago. They basically found like nowhere were there deficiencies in field studies around the country pertaining to Windows. Because as Joe said, the window manufacturers they're at the code hearings. They're producing windows that meet the latest code. So you'd have to go out of your way, right, to find the windows for an older code. So yes, you're just by the fact that the industry is responsive to the code, you're getting that equipment, that better equipment inherently. Torrance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my concern is pretty simple, as whether it's 2021 or 2024 adoption is the amended version of the code. And, in the past, we have accepted new codes and the state amended them to such level that there was, only remnants of the actual IEC in that code. And in making sure that we are pushing towards those items within the code that need to stay, that don't get the black magic marker mysteriously and get removed because of our amendment.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at the DOE map, and you see a lot of states adopting latest codes, but then so now DOE used to have the map. They would just indicate the adopted code, but now they do it based on the equivalency of the code. So if the state adopted the 21 but amended it to 2009, the DOE map shows 2009, and so that's a really important piece here, is to not amend, and hopefully with some of the rules regarding the IRA funding that the state would be eligible for, that it has to be an unamended code in order to get those dollars. So hopefully that may have some influence on the committee perhaps, or the legislature, that, we'll see. Yeah, well, these are great comments, and I appreciate folks' openness and expressing this. Can I just ask, Terrence, who are you? A design professional, a builder?
I am a contractor.
Contractor
And consultant. I do a lot of new construction consulting on commercial, but then I'm a insulation air sealing contractor for commercial and homes.
Thanks.
There was a comment from Bill in the chat about the majority of the general public believes that there are codes that keep our buildings safe and efficient. I think that's an interesting comment, and I really appreciate the discussion. If folks want to add more in the chat or raise their hand, that's great. One thing that's worth mentioning as part of our project, this Building a Strong Foundation in Wisconsin Energy Codes, is a public engagement campaign, so to speak. So we are working on, we were kind of waiting for the code process to get started, the residential code update process to get started. So we've been waiting for that, but we do feel like there is value in really making sure people understand. And it kind of gets, I think Corinne made that point, it's like if the people have no way of knowing whether a building is a shoddy building or built to energy codes or efficient, high performance, it's hard to tell. And so I agree, there is a lack of information, and we're hoping to at least chip away at that through some of efforts in public education. And you'll probably hear more about that in future code collaboratives.
Definitely. And I would reiterate what Bill said there. I mean, there's a general trust and misinformation around what building codes do. And I was trying to type this in the chat, but it got too long, so I decided I would unmute again. But if I remember correctly, during the discussion over the last commercial code adoption, there was a debate amongst those on the council about whether or not energy was a safety measure that even needed to be talked about or included. That the lack of connection between the safety components of anything tied to sustainability, but especially energy, if there was, they deemed it as not connected, so therefore it wasn't a high priority. And we see that manifest in the resources that the staff and things in DSPS are given to try to reinforce and support and whatnot. So that is something I completely forgot about, Bill. So I'm really glad that you put that in the chat, because that was a significant barrier in my mind. And then you have the other danger zone, which was that there were recurring comments from inside the council and outside the council that the general industry has the best interests of their clients and whatnot in mind, and that they've been delivering that. So therefore, why do we need codes to be any stronger? Because if they're going to deliver a better building, they'll just do it. Or oh, well, the HVAC is already designed better, so we don't need the code. Like, there were some really strange danger points that came up in which the interconnectedness and intersectionality of all of the different attributes and things were being completely lost in conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think energy code as a life safety code is something folks have been thinking about across the country. And certainly when you look at the energy code as it reduces flame spread because it's a tighter building, reduces moisture, which could lead to mold. These are all safety issues that the energy code addresses. Indoor air quality is a safety issue. So I put in the chat a one-pager that SWEEP, one of the RIO's regional energy efficiency organizations, did on the energy code as a life safety code. Bill, is that a legacy hand or?
Yeah, I've got another comment, just
Yeah.
so the committee's aware. 2017, I was chairman of the State Code Council for Electrical. This past go around in 23 as a member of the council, but not the chairman. But one of the things you have to understand in our opposition and the people we're dealing with in the legislature, in 2017, we battled a long time because there was safety items that we wanted in the electrical code that were being fought at the legislative level. And one of the comments made during one of our discussions was, well, when you look at it, it's similar to requiring seatbelts in a car. And the response we got from one of the state staffers and a couple of legislators was, well, we shouldn't be mandated to have seatbelts. If we wanted to use those, that should be our option. And they don't understand or they oppose the idea that if we adopt codes, we're forcing them to do things that they shouldn't have to, even though we all know that number one, it's there for safety. Number two, it's there for energy efficiency, for lowering our operational costs, for lowering our insurance costs, all of that stuff. But this is the mentality we're battling against, is the fact that you can't tell me what to do. If I want to do it, a good builder will do it, but we don't care if we have slumps. And that's the basic interpretation I got.
Yeah, that's certainly a difficult mindset for sure. Great. How are we doing on time? Do we have other comments?
I think. Oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
for it. No, go for it.
I'm just wondering if there's been any conversation about holding like an advocacy type learning session for legislature folks. Is that something we're getting to? I see, Matt, I see your hand signaling, because I'm just wondering if that would be, I mean, I don't know, it might be like talking to a wall, but at least we can say we did it. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, great suggestion. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, along those lines, one of the things AIA Wisconsin did, I think it was in February, we had our legislature day where we, AIA Wisconsin, basically architect members, scheduled time, came to Madison and scheduled time with their respective legislators, both in the Assembly and in the Senate, to talk about concerns. One of which was, the need to adopt current building codes, or as current building codes as we can. So on some level, that effort is taking place, but it's not very widespread, I think. And that's a one-on-one conversation with your legislator, excuse me. I don't have any idea how effective that is. You can kind of gauge in some of those discussions how receptive they are, and some of them how it's just, well, you're a constituent and I got to listen to you, so I'll listen to you, but I'm not doing anything about it. So anyway.
Matt, did you have a comment?
Just that I wanted to say I think that's a great segue into the next item on our agenda, talking about subcommittees.
Sounds good. I'll give it anyone maybe just one more minute. If there's any other voices that we haven't heard that has something they really want to express, we'll give you that opportunity before we move to the next. So, go ahead.
I was going to say a quick comment from one of the B4 presentations we were at. Someone asked why we have building codes at all and that they should just be abolished. So that's a step below getting rid of seatbelt level of anti-codes.
Great, thanks for all
Robbie, I'm glad that you piped in, and Robbie and Bill, I feel like, your input from what you're hearing out in the field is also very, very, it's great to get that kind of feedback. So thanks for piping in on that.
Definitely.
Joe.
All right, Joe.
Just echoing that real quick, putting on my old man hat, having served on the Commercial Building Code Council for a number of years. And that sentiment of why do we have codes is old and has been out there for quite a while. And my response to that a lot of times is be careful what you ask for. Because I mean, I get into a lot of arguments or a lot of discussions sometimes. Oh, we don't have to do that because it's code. Well, I'm the design professional and I've decided we need to do more than the code says. And this is what we need to do. So if you want to abolish the codes, and I've participated in several discussions along those lines that, this should be the model for permitting and constructing buildings. And it doesn't need to include codes. The industry will regulate itself. Like I said, be careful what you ask for. I deal a lot with liability as an architect. And if on some level I can look at the code, to provide me some backup as to how I do things. If there's no code, I could cover myself a lot more completely, and that's going to drive up the cost of buildings a lot more than a current building code will.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, so definitely that's an issue that we're seeing, and even here in our region, there's a bill pending in Missouri that would restrict the state from adopting any code beyond the 2009, and it would be retroactive to those few communities that actually have stretch codes beyond the base code. And so that's also sort of a scary prospect, but let's focus on the opportunities and leave it on a positive note. And I'll turn it over to Matt. I know there's more to the agenda, but yeah, thank you all for your comments. This was a great conversation. I encourage you to continue putting comments in the chat or emailing us directly, and particularly if you have ideas for the next collaborative meeting for to carry on this discussion, let us know. Thanks. Matt, it's all you.
Yeah, thanks, Darren.
Sure.
Yeah, so one thing that Sarah mentioned earlier was that there was some interest in codes collaborative subcommittees that would meet at least in a different group than this. Maybe it's not much more frequently, but in a different group to help progress this work. Some potential areas for subcommittees could be residential, commercial, manufacturing, business, advocacy, technology, and multifamily were just some that I came up with. And I think the idea would be that if I know there are a lot of commercial focused folks in this call, and I know we also have the UDC going on, which is focused on residential buildings, and just wondering if those of you who may have expressed interest in the subcommittee, either in the survey or recently I heard some interest in an advocacy subcommittee of sorts. So I'm just wondering if any of you all have any interest. We're hoping to have a maximum of 3 just from our staff capacity, but wondering if any of you all have any interest in a subcommittee.
I'll note that we'll also be following up in an email with a form to kind of if you want to collect your thoughts on this and respond there. But if there's any thoughts for now, we can definitely talk about it here too. Maybe we'll table this to the feedback format, which is good.
Yeah, we counted in the exact amount of time. Thanks for your question, Torrance. Expectations and goals on subcommittees. I think the expectations would be to participate fully in any subcommittee meetings and potentially help in the work that the subcommittee sets out before it. I think we're going to have time commitments. Yeah, I think it would be like an hour, potentially a month or a quarter, depending on how often the group decides they want to meet. And I think they would be talking about challenges specific to subcommittee area, whether that's advocacy, talking about ways to influence code, or in the residential space. So talking about more specific issues and hoping to I think about ways to address those issues as a group.
Yeah, and we can definitely in that feedback form ask what expectations you all are looking for, both with this larger group and the subcommittees. Other states have done like one hour subcommittee meetings every quarter, and on the alternating like 2 months of that quarter meet in the full group. So like every quarter it would be a total of like 2.5 hours, I think, of meetings. But subcommittees might also we may also choose to have like, you know, pre-work or helping to review a resource or something like that in between. Yeah, Jeanette.
I was just a couple of thoughts. There's a few questions out around the logistics. Certainly we can come up with like some bounds on like time commitments and topics and goals, but I do feel like the benefit of these subcommittees is action. So like to the extent that the people who want to be part of the subcommittees want to drive some of those details, we wanted to make it useful for you all to be participating in those subcommittees. So like if it works for you to have a meeting an hour every month, that'd be great. If it doesn't, if it's every 2 months, you know, in reality, we want it to be, you know, accommodating enough and flexible enough so that you feel like you are an effective participant. So just I wanted to toss that back to those that are interested. We're happy to come up with, you know, logistics, but we want you to be the active participants. So
Yeah, I've seen code committee, co-collaborative subcommittees, some that are very active that met on a weekly basis, you know, that were really focused on a particular project or maybe a report or a lobbying effort, and then others, you know, that met quarterly. So it really is depending on the inclination of that subcommittee members and what kind of project they have at hand. And some, you know, became more active around the time that codes were being actively adopted, you know, and then it was in the interim, it was less active. So it really depends.
All right. Just in the interest of time, I think we're going to move along to our breakout rooms. So we're going to kind of take just some time to separate out into 3 different rooms. And I think we're going to focus for today just on this first question, kind of hearing from you all, like given the challenges we just talked about, what, you know, what one resource or piece of information do you think might be the most helpful? And hopefully we end up with a whole bunch of ideas that in our next meetings we can kind of work on prioritizing and maybe starting to flesh out what these might look like and starting to develop them. So with that, I'm going to put us into rooms. They should open in just a minute, and we'll take about 10 minutes together to work through these questions. We'd really like to hear from everybody and have everyone in the rooms take a chance to answer this question, and then we'll come back together at 10:55-ish.
Joining.
All right. Hello again, everybody. Hopefully you had some good conversations. I think everybody is back. We have just a few minutes left. So I guess we could just take maybe a minute or 2 if anyone wants to share any key takeaways or anything that came up in your group that would be worth sharing to the larger group. And then in a couple of minutes, I'll just go over some wrap-up items before we adjourn for today. So Matt or Darren, any key takeaways from your group or anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think our group felt things were that, you know, the collaborative and some of the resources we're headed in the right direction, and to continue to make these resources, that's really what we need to provide to the legislature, and to keep it simple and high level for some of the takeaways. Cost data seem to be an important factor, like what we presented at the CPS. Those are the takeaways from our group.
Yeah, as always, some good cost data is going to be helpful. Also, just preparedness from an advocacy perspective, being prepared when the time comes for a hearing or a lobbying day. And then information about the volume of construction and how it's impacted when codes are advanced. So if there's information about how construction was impacted last time we advanced codes, that sort of resources could be useful.
Thanks, Matt. Room 3, anything to share?
Yeah, cost data also came up for us, talking about how the conversation always leads to customer costs, and that it's good to have variety and understanding like where these numbers are coming from. One thing that came up too was just awareness, that people are not aware of like how outdated our code is, and that how we used to be, we being like Wisconsin used to be further ahead relative to other states, but things have changed in past years. And then the last thing I'll mention too is just the idea that, you know, energy codes are, you know, a consumer protection that's not talked a lot about. So want to bring awareness to that too.
Thanks, Cynthia. All right, thanks everyone for sharing. Just a minute left, so I'll go really quickly with our last wrap-up notes for today. So I wanted to make a quick plug for a webinar that might be of interest to you all that Slipstream will be hosting on Thursday, April 10th from 11 to 12 p.m. This webinar is going to feature findings from our recently completed new construction baseline study for larger commercial buildings with complex HVAC in the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast. The project team is going to be discussing key findings, lessons learned, and what this means for stakeholders in office, education, and multifamily sectors. And this project is funded by the Department of Energy and conducted by Slipstream in partnership with the Institute for Market Transformation. So hopefully you're able to attend. It should be pretty interesting.
We don't have the link to that yet, right? Just to be clear.
No,
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Stay tuned for a link to join. All right, and then lastly, just some next steps for us to think about. I'll be sending that follow-up email shortly with you all with the meeting slides and recording, along with a brief questionnaire to kind of gauge your interest about subcommittees and thinking about expectations. As we talked about earlier, we'll also include a call for topics for our next full meeting. If anyone might be interested in presenting or sharing something to the group, we can try and get you on the agenda. And I'll share that revised version of the mission statement in case anyone has final edits for that. And our next meeting will probably be in June or July of this year. And then lastly, keep an eye out for that Recce emailed newsletter, which hopefully should be coming out to you all pretty soon. Looking forward to getting that started. And with that, sorry for being a minute over, but thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciated all of your input and hearing from you all and taking the time to talk. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, folks. Bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.